Coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in the heart of Johannesburg, this is Prime News on SABC 3. And here's what's dominating in your leads at this hour.
If you are not fearful of the minister, why then did you act?
First up, IDEC head Advocate Andrea Johnson faced tough questions over her application of the law in IDEC's fraud and corruption case related to the appointment of Brigadier Dineo Mukwege in crime intelligence.
It leaves a bit of a legal question that I would like to ask legal, if at all, if they can assist.
Opposition parties serving on Parliament's impeachment committee say that their work would be futile if President Cyril Ramaphosa did not appear before them in person. Former Speaker of the National Assembly and former Minister of Defence, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, has pleaded not guilty to the charges against her. Good evening and welcome to Prime News on SABC 3. My name is Beki Mutumomolete and your sign language interpreter with me in studio today is Fortune Madlanga. Let's chart a course together through the day's biggest stories that impact our world. And with that said, here are your leads. IDEC head Advocate Andrea Johnson, who holds over 30 years' experience as a prosecutor, faced tough questions over her application of the law in IDEC's fraud and corruption case related to the appointment of Brigadier Dineo Mukwege in crime intelligence. This as Johnson's initial submission that the test to MP Fadil Adams' suspicions in the Section 27 referral was a subjective one, raised concerns from the Commission's bench.
In terms of the Madlanga Commission's continued probe into IDEC's fraud and corruption case against crime intelligence boss, Lieutenant General Dumsani Khumalo, and other high-ranking officers, intensified after IDEC head Advocate Andrea Johnson's test to the suspicions by MP Fadil Adams in the Section 27 referral affidavit, which triggered this case, raised questions.
It is only now that you have clarity as to what exactly the test is. That is a test which is not subjective as you suggested it was, or a test which does not seek to mix a subjective and objective test. It is simply objective. So before now, you had, I feel bad to have to use this word, but your understanding was this muddled view of what the test was, which muddled view came out as I engaged you. So that was your understanding until now, until during this engagement. Is that a fair suggestion to you?
It is fair.
In addition, the Commission heard earlier that the referral actually emanated from the Office of the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, in a letter to IDEC.
If you are not fearful of the minister, why then did you act?
Is to follow up on, is there a Section 27?
The hearings continue. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Pretoria.
Should President Cyril Ramaphosa be called before the impeachment committee to give testimony on exactly what part he played in the whole Phala debacle? This was a key part of discussion in today's committee meeting. This meeting was discussing the appointment of an evidence leader as well as its terms of reference. For some, having Ramaphosa before the committee to tell his side of the story is a non-negotiable, while others believe the president should not be placed in this position.
The draft terms of reference, made up of inputs from political parties, was read out to MPs. But one particular point stood out, and that was the wording around whether President Ramaphosa, who is at the center of this entire saga, should appear in person to testify.
And the information is peculiarly within the knowledge of the president. So he doesn't have a choice with respect, and I'm glad there seems to be consensus that evidence must be given by the president himself and not through an intermediary.
The wording as presently formulated that the president can elect to give evidence, and should he, firstly, the issue of through an intermediary, which we would not support according to our document,
We don't believe that he should be able to give evidence in absentia. We also agree with the negative inference suggestion that has been made previously. We absolutely agree with that.
You can't have an inquiry over the president and the president does not come to testify.
The EFF objects to the president not giving evidence himself. Will be failing the people of South Africa.
But not everyone is in agreement with this.
We believe that the president cannot be compelled to testify.
I think for me it leaves a bit of a legal question that I would like to ask legal, if at all, if they can assist.
Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
To this now, former Speaker of the National Assembly and former Minister of Defence, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, has pleaded not guilty to the charges against her. Her corruption trial is underway at the High Court in Pretoria.
Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula's corruption trial is underway at the Pretoria High Court, where she faces 12 counts of corruption and money laundering, wherein she is accused of receiving and soliciting 4.5 million rands. Through her legal representative, Advocate Siabulela SC, she states that she did not have any lawful reason to receive money from contractor Nombasa Ndlovu. However, she did admit that there were upgrades and construction work that was done in her office. The first witness on the stand was General Bantu Holomisa as the first complainant on the issue in Parliament. In 2021, Holomisa wrote a letter to the then chairperson of Parliament's Joint Standing Committee of Defence accusing her of receiving gifts and cash to the tune of 5 million rands from a SANDF contractor between 2017 and 2019. Holomisa says that the complainant Nombasa Ndlovu told him that she had paid money to Nqakula and she had proof. Ndlovu submitted an affidavit to the law enforcement agencies confessing to bribing Mapisa-Nqakula with 2.5 million rands in 11 different payments. The state will tomorrow call its second witness, Nombasa Ndlovu, who is the sole director of Umkhombi Pty Ltd that was contracted by the Department of Defence that paid funds of above 2.5 million rands that were solicited from Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula allegedly. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Pretoria.
The suspended South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrew Chauke, has been declared fit to hold office by the Nkabinde inquiry. He had been placed on precautionary suspension by President Cyril Ramaphosa in July last year, following a request by the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi, for an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. Chauke had been on suspension for nearly a year. Batohi alleged that Chauke had made questionable prosecutorial decisions in several high-profile matters, including cases involving the former Cato Manor Police Unit and former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli. The inquiry, chaired by retired Constitutional Court Justice Besin Nkabinde, cleared Chauke of allegations relating to his fitness to lead one of the country's busiest prosecuting offices. It heard evidence over several months from prosecutors, investigators and senior officials. The report was handed to President Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this month. The presidency and the National Prosecuting Authority are expected to outline the process for Chauke's formal return to office. All right, when we return, the defense in the case of a British Zimbabwean man accused of the murder of his wife and 2 daughters have received the warrant of arrest issued for him by authorities in the UK. We bring you this and more coming up after the break. Welcome back to Prime News on SABC3. The Electoral Commission is calling on all political parties and independent candidates to submit their nominations early via the online portal to avoid a final hour scramble. With the system set to close in late August, over 200 stakeholders have already received specialized training to ensure a smooth transition toward the November 4 polls. The initiative marks a critical step in the Commission's commitment to delivering a free and fair election process for the upcoming vote. Joining us now to discuss these preparations is our special guest, Provincial Electoral Officer Ntombifuthi Masinga. Ntombifuthi, good evening and welcome to Prime News, and let's jump right in.
Good evening and good evening to the viewers.
Good evening. Can you tell us why the Commission is pushing for early submissions and what are the risks of waiting?
We open the online candidate nomination early, even before proclamation. Ordinarily, proclamation signals the closure of the voters' roll and the opening of the candidate nomination system. But we realize that usually there is a rush, a last-minute rush by political parties and independent candidates if we leave this process to the prescribed period within the election timetable. So what we've done, we expect that candidate nomination will open early in August and close on the third week of August. But we decided on the weekend of 20 to 21 June, when we had our first registration weekend, that let's open for political parties to start capturing their candidates online so that they have ample opportunity to capture you, change and chop and change candidates and save all that they will need to do when the candidate nomination officially opens on election proclamation date is to submit.
All right. Now, in terms of the rollout of the online systems, I'm interested to know what the feedback you've received from political parties is so far.
This is not the first election we're using online, the online platform for registering candidature. This is probably the fifth election, but it really took off in the last two elections in 2021 and 2024. And the feedback has been nothing but amazing from political parties. It gives them the freedom of not having to rush to go and submit at the IEC office out of the 250-something offices throughout the country. You can capture from the comfort of your home, and is a system that they've really appreciated. It includes the capturing of candidates as well as the payment of all the applicable deposits that they need to pay to contest this election. Since the system opened on the 21st of June, already there have been 25 political parties that have been very active on the platform. They've started capturing candidates, they've started making their payments. So it tells us that this is the preferred system of submission by political parties.
And from the training sessions that you've done recently, what were the main concerns raised during those sessions?
The concerns came mainly from new political parties that have just joined the election space. They have not used the system before, so they were obviously more cautious around issues of security of any system that is administered online. We have assured them. Those that have used the system before have also assured them that the system is quite safe. We have built in all the security measures to make sure that the information is protected that is submitted by political parties. But let me indicate that for those that still prefer to do manual submissions in our offices, that facility is still available. But unfortunately, if you prefer to go and make a manual submission in any of our offices, you need to go and physically make that submission in a municipality that you intend contesting. So if you live in a eThekwini municipality, for example, you need to go to a eThekwini IEC office to make your submissions, which is not very convenient because we know things happen. You can leave thinking that you'll make it on time by 5 o'clock when you close on the day that will be prescribed on the election timetable. And things happen and you don't make it. So we are encouraging parties to rather go for the online system. They have 2 months to capture their candidates and pay their deposits. And I would imagine that that would be the most convenient system that most political parties would prefer.
Okay, now let's talk about the technology itself. How exactly does it guarantee a fairer election on November 4th?
It makes access easy for anyone who would like to participate. It's not only open for political parties, it's open for independent candidates as well that would like to contest these elections. What we do, we issue the online candidate nomination system code to a political party. It's entirely up to the political party whether they only leave that to one person to capture candidates for the country nationally, but they can decide as a party that they are going to allocate authorized persons in provinces or even in municipalities who will then capture candidates on behalf of the party. So the control is basically with the party on how they safekeep that code, which allows that them access to go and capture and make payments. So it's a very safe system. We've used it before. What we also do is that whilst there is documentation that needs to support that candidature, we don't ask them to scan that document, that supporting documentation into the system. They only need to keep it safe in case we request to see that submission, so that we avoid them having to scan bulk documents into our system. But otherwise, the first thing that they need to comply with first time is payments, and then they can capture candidates and keep documents, your candidate nomination and acceptance forms with them, copies of ID documents, so that if we need to see those documents, we can see them.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us here on Prime News on SABC 3. That was the KZN Provincial Electoral Officer, Ntombifuthi Masinga, giving us a roundup on the upcoming local government elections. All right, to this now, the defense in the case of a British Zimbabwean man accused of the murder of his wife and 2 daughters have received the warrant of arrest issued for him by authorities in the UK. 45-year-old Ndodana Chuma made his second appearance at the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today and abandoned bail, and he will return to court next month.
Thank you, Worship. I do confirm that the warrant of arrest was sent through via email to Mr. Machingura. I was not aware that there was a request for further documentation. Same will be transmitted by email before the next appearance date.
Thank you for staying with us. Moloto residents in Mpumalanga brought their decades-long fight for rail straight to the Department of Transport today. And with public comment on the National Rail Master Plan closing today, they say that it is now or never.
It's a long road from Kwandebele to Pretoria, but for Moloto residents, they say the journey to be heard has taken far longer. Today, they filled the pavements outside the Department of Transport, armed with a memorandum of demands as public engagements on the draft National Rail Master Plan closes.
We write to express our profound shock, disappointment, and outright rejection regarding the apparent omission of the Moloto Rail Corridor from the current draft National Rail Master Plan.
In April this year, Transport Minister Baba Krisi released the draft National Rail Master Plan for public comment. It's a 2 trillion 30-year blueprint to reposition rail as quote-unquote the backbone of the country's logistics and transport system by 2050. The plan, as announced, would abandon roughly 5,000 kilometers of ghost tracks and shift focus to high-density corridors. These Moloto residents say the Moloto Rail Corridor was initially included in the infrastructure plan of the President's office, but was later abandoned. They want it put back on the map or the draft plan. The proposed line would connect Gauteng, Limpopo and Mpumalanga via the R573, also named one of the country's deadliest roads. Department representatives were also in attendance to accept the memorandum. However, when we put the allegations to them that Moloto was quietly removed, they declined to comment. Nomvio Ntanjana, SABC News in Pretoria.
It is now time for us to take a look at what we can expect from Mzansi weather, and our team is on standby with all the details you need. With that said, your forecast is coming up next.
Thank you very much and a very warm welcome to the weather desk. Now let's take a quick look at what to expect in our weather details for this evening as well as for tomorrow. Clear skies ahead of tonight for most parts of the country, but partly cloudy to cloudy conditions as you move into central Northern Cape as well as the western parts of that province. Now the Western Cape can also expect some partly cloudy conditions extending into the south coast of the Eastern Cape. Tomorrow, a cold front is expected to brush through the southern parts of the country, leaving a trail of isolated showers and thunder showers over the southern parts of the Western Cape into the Eastern Cape as well as KwaZulu-Natal coastline. Still expecting some isolated showers over the central interior, extending into parts of the northwest and the Northern Cape. Now taking a closer look at our temperatures for Gauteng, a minimum of 8 in Johannesburg and a maximum of 23 will be the maximum in Pretoria. Now for Limpopo, expecting a rather cold morning, especially there over Lephalale, with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 27. Thabazimbi 5 in the morning and a maximum of 26. Polokwane will peak at 25 degrees. Mpumalanga can expect a cool morning, especially in the eastern parts. 13 as a minimum in Skukuza, warming up to a hot 31 degrees. 22 will be the maximum in Carolina. We're expecting cooler conditions in KwaZulu-Natal in the morning, especially there across the coastline, with a minimum of 16 for Durban and a maximum of 24. Quite cold as you move into the interior. Umnambiti minimum of 3 and a maximum of 25. The Eastern Cape can expect a rather cold morning, especially there in Komani with a minimum of 4, warming up to 21 later in the afternoon, maximum of 22 for Gqeberha, and Kwanondjoli will peak at 18 degrees. We are expecting a cold morning in parts of the Western Cape. Laingsburg, a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 16. Cape Town, 9 in the morning and a maximum of 15. We are expecting a rather cold morning in the Northern Cape as well, especially there in Sutherland, a minimum of -5, only peaking at 11 later in the afternoon, 4 in the morning in Uppington and a maximum of 19. The Free State Province can expect a cool morning as well, with a minimum of 6 in Welkom and a maximum of 22. Bothaville peaking at 23. And lastly, for the Northwest, yet another cool morning across this province. 10 as a minimum in Mafikeng and 24 as a maximum. Tosca will peak at 24 as well. That's all from the weather desk.
And that's how we conclude our bulletin this evening, and we thank you greatly for your audience. Do join us again tomorrow for more of the updates you need. And until next time, from myself, Becky, and the team, it is good night.